At Flat Global Metals, we are in the business of resilience. Steel makes and shapes our world, but when the market shifts, every link in the chain becomes vulnerable, impacting both physical supply and your bottom line.
We're thinking in terms of 25% on Mexico and Canada because they're allowing vast numbers of people. Canada's a very bad abuser also. Vast numbers of people to come in and fentanyl to come in.
When do you think you would enact this?
I think February 1st.
Hey, everybody. After that little opening there, I need to get right to the point. I don't want to bury the line. Within the last couple hours, it has been announced on some of the financial pages, and I'm sure it's going to make the news just about the time you guys get to see this. But Canadian Steel's company Stelco and Mexico Steel company Flat Global Metals have just announced that they are not taking any further steel orders, nor will they supply any further quota to the United States. Their statements issued separately, and this is not a joint effort between them, it just happens to be that they both announced it at the same time. Their statement is that they're concerned about the recent tariffs that are being threatened by the president, and they're concerned over the fact that, you know, they were part of the old NAFTA. And Donald Trump did away with NAFTA and renegotiated it to, I believe it was called the USCM, the United States, Canada, Mexico Agreement. And this was an agreement that he organized himself. He touted it as the greatest deal ever, and now threatens both of those partners with 25% tariffs after that North American, Canadian, Mexican agreement states there are no tariffs. So he's breaking his own agreement and he's threatening them. So they have decided that they are going to withdraw from the U.S. market. Now, where that leaves the U.S. steel manufacturing and where that leaves the U.S. auto industry is yet to be seen. How long this lasts, this could have some devastating effects on it. Global Metals is not a raw metal producer, but they are a producer of finished metal goods such as rooftops, you know, the steel and aluminum rooftops on buildings, steel paneling, steel sheeting, corrugated materials, structural steel, possibly even for something like what would be built for the southern border. Canada Stelco was a raw steel producer, and they're located just across the U.S. border off of New York State in a town called Hamilton, Ontario, right on the Niagara River, which ironically also happens to be home of the Robert Moses Power Dam, which Canada is threatening to shut off the power to the northeastern United States at that power dam. That is a wholly and solely owned facility by Canada, and they sell electricity to the United States through a company called Niagara Mohawk, who provides the electricity for the area that I live in the northeastern United States. Now, none of this is good. This situation could get out of hand, and we'll know more about it, say, within the next 24 hours. But that's the sum and substance of what I was able to get out of the financials and out of the news media's rather tight-lipped hold on what's going on right now. CNN, CNBC, CBS, ABC, none of them are reporting anything on this yet. So this is just something that I picked up off the financial news while I was reviewing it, and I promise you I'll bring you more on it. Today's going to end up being a little bit of a hodgepodge also. I've got two updates that I want to bring to you. I spoke to you about the North Carolina Supreme Court elections and the update last week that the fight between Democratic candidate Riggs, who's already on the North Carolina Supreme Court, who had won a re-election, against her Republican Griffin, who also happens to be an appeals court judge in North Carolina. Griffin had not liked the outcome of the voting. He lost by 734 votes out of something like 3.3 million votes out of North Carolina. So he did what was legally allowed, and he asked for a recount. And that turned out the same results he had lost, so he asked for a second recount. And a lot of states allow that, as long as Mr. Griffin was willing to pay for that second recount. Apparently that's what happened. And when he didn't like the results of that, he filed a case with the North Carolina Supreme Court. The North Carolina Supreme Court, as of this morning, has declined to take Mr. Griffin's appeal or his request to the court, his argument before the court. They are not going to hear it even. They are recommending that he follow the standard procedure in North Carolina, which is to take it to a local state court, up through the appeals court, and then out. That's going to, their idea to decline his request is going to force him into that. But the side effect of that is that there's still a stay not allowing Riggs' reelection, ironically, with Riggs still sitting on the Supreme Court with her current seat. So I'll get you more on that, but that's the latest. I promised you an update on that. And that's where we stand as of right now. That's the news as of yesterday, late yesterday afternoon. Now, there is one other issue going on, and this is probably going to cause a little bit of controversy, and I'm no stranger to that, so I really don't care. The January 6th parolees that have been released, I'm not going to issue a statement of my own personal thing on how I feel either way of that, but there's been some developments in 3 different individuals. The most notable of all of them is Daniel Charles Ball. He's a Florida resident, and he was released. It appeared that when he was released, no one bothered to check his background or to check to see if there was anything active on him. It's usually a standard procedure in law enforcement when someone's being released. They do a quick background check on what's called the PINS network, the Police Information System, and they look for any active warrants or any issues like that. Well, he was released, and unfortunately, Mr. Ball had a federal warrant pending for his arrest on gun possessions because he is a previous felon. He has a felony conviction of domestic violence and battery by strangulation dating back to June of 2017. He also has something from October 2021 of resisting law enforcement with violence. At some point in time when they were visiting his home, they realized that he had a .22 caliber rifle and ammunition, and I believe the name of the town is Homosassa, Florida. And they then issued a warrant for him before they could catch up with him with that. Obviously, he was arrested in Washington, D.C., but then released, and the feds had to actually go back out and grab him and drag him back in. He now is sitting on no bail, as far as I know, and he is awaiting the charges. I know the area that I live in, if you're a convicted felon and you're caught with a firearm, that's usually what's called the Empire Act, and that usually gets you a mandatory felony conviction, and you go to jail. You get enough of those, I think it's 3, you fall into what's called the Exile Act, and you are then considered a predicate felon, and you are in jail probably for the rest of your life. Mr. Ball apparently has multiple felony convictions and is sitting awaiting his trial on the latest charges of felony possession of a firearm. And that brings us up to the infamous Mr. Stewart Rhodes. Stewart was released the other day. He was not given a pardon, by the way. His sentence was commuted. So in other words, his record will stand, his conviction will stand, but his sentence was shortened up to, you're out of jail now. Now, the only problem with that is he was seen in the Capitol building on a tour, and he was approached by the guards, and apparently those guards were rebuffed by a Republican senator, and I'm looking to see if I can find his name here. He had been invited to meet that man, the senator, at the Capitol building, and I'm not seeing his name here. Okay, here it is. It indicated that he was invited there by Florida Republican Representative Gus Bilirakis. I hope I say his name right. There's only one problem. Rhodes is out on a commutation, and he still has to live up to the terms of his conviction and parole, which means he had to acquire permission from the D.C. court to enter D.C. Once he was released, he had to go. And he did not seek that permission, and he was rebuffed with it and reminded that the conditions of his parole is that he has to actively contact the court for permission to come back to Washington, D.C. Mr. Rhodes is back out, and he's being sent home and shushed home. And as I remember right, his wife divorced him during the proceedings, so it's not like he's going back to happy home to see the wife and kids. The only other person that's notable in this whole thing is Enrique Tarrio. He is the head of the Proud Boys. He has returned quietly back to Miami and is with his family, but unfortunately has made a few statements on the NBC affiliate down in Miami, indicating here, it says, in a public statement, Tarrio expressed gratitude to President Trump for the pardon and vowed retribution against those who held him responsible and for his imprisonment. Enrique's not stepping out on the right foot. At least he's staying home on it, though. That's what I've got for you today, folks. There's a lot going on out there. There are a couple of newsworthy stories that I wanted to make a podcast on, but I thought that the updates on this, the U.S. steel issue, which is definitely going to affect the U.S. economy, were more important to get out than telling you a story about somebody else. So with that, I thank you for being here. My subscribers, I am truly humbled by you. The questions and the responses that I'm getting are awesome. A lot of you have long-winded remarks back to you. Please get back to me. I did ask a couple of you for some information. Please get that back to me, and I'll be more than happy to follow up on what you wanted to talk to me about. In the meantime, I want to thank you and wish you all a wonderful evening. Good night.